Some words have been changed to abide by YouTube censorship. In 1969, Mario Puzo published a novel called The Godfather that would go on to become a bestseller after Paramount Pictures bought the rights to produce the film and release the movie in 1972. It was followed by The Godfather Part 2 as a prequel and The Godfather Part 3 as the sequel. It's a story following an Italian-American family's rise to power through the corruption of state, capitalism, and religion, and how these forces eventually destroyed a family and one man's soul. Although the male characters are the focus of the story, many female characters referred to in the book and the movies play a pivotal role in creating a world based closely on the true mafia lives of the American and Italian underworld. The two wives of Michael Corleone, Kay and Apollonia, depict the old world and new world. As the main character, Michael is pulled in opposing directions, the choice of light and dark, what is good and what is evil. Reference material will include the Godfather book, the Godfather movie trilogy, and the book Wise Guy, published in 1985 by Nicholas Pileggi. Both the Godfather book and the movie began the story of the family legacy in the middle, with The Godfather 2 preceding the earlier storyline of Part 1, and in the book the prequel begins in Book 3, Chapter 14. It's easier to follow the storyline from its linear inception, and although the two wives of Michael Corleone will not surface until the second film, there are other supporting women in the story who are worth mentioning. Along with the two Mrs. Michael Corleones is the transformation of Connie Corleone from a young girl to the matriarch of the Corleone family. Vito Andolini was sent at the age of 12 to America by his mother to escape the men who killed his father and by proxy meant to take the young boy's life. It was the vendetta of the old world. Vito was close to manhood, and it was his responsibility to avenge the death of his father by the Mafia after he unalived a Mafia chief in a public quarrel. The Mafia were more powerful than the government and the Catholic Church. This unholy trinity controlled the country, and Sicily in particular. Vito in the book changed his last name to Corleone to tie himself to the name of the village he came from in Sicily. But in the movie, Vito was given the last name when medical personnel at Ellis Island assumed the name of the village where he came from, pinned on his shirt, was his last name. In the movie, Vito's mother brought the young boy with her to plead for his life from a Mafia chief after already losing her husband and her older son to the vendetta. She attempted to persuade him Vito was too ignorant to ever understand or avenge his family. Little more is known about her except she is in constant mourning over the unaliving of her husband and oldest son. Now she was attempting to save her remaining son's life. The Mafia chief does not accept her explanation. So she held a knife to his throat and told her Vito to turn, only for the boy to watch her mother die as he ran away. It was his extended family who hid him, and they sent him to America to start a new life. Of his wife, she is mentioned first on page 194. At the age of 18, Vito married an Italian girl of only 16, but a skilled cook, a good housewife. It was all she was required to be. She was uneducated, and although her main language would be Italian, in time she would learn enough English to speak it brokenly in the book, but was incredibly bilingual in the film. She knew what the Mafia was, and knew her husband was involved with it, although to what extent she would have to reason on her own. Her husband would not discuss such matters openly with her. It was in part to protect her from his dangerous life, but also the men believed women had no capacity to understand men's power. On page 203, Vito Corleone told his wife to take the two children, Sonny and Fredo, down into the street after supper, and on no account let them come up to the house until after he gave her permission. She was to sit on guard at the tenement door. He had some private business with Fanucci that could not be interrupted. He saw the look of fear on her face and was angry. He said to her quietly, "Do you think you married a fool?" She didn't answer. She did not answer because she was frightened, not of Fanucci now, but of her husband. He was changing visibly before her eyes, hour by hour, into a man who radiated some dangerous force. He had always been quiet, speaking little, but always gentle, always reasonable, which was extraordinary in a young Sicilian male. What she was seeing was the shedding of his protective coloration of a harmless nobody, now that he was ready to start on his destiny. And as it is with the Mafia, Vito began his destiny by unaliving a man and taking his place. Vito's wife understood her husband's rise in power. She also would have known it was necessary. A man either moves up or he is unalived. There is no choice, and he never gets out, not while he is living. She is 23 and he is 25 when he made his first move by unaliving Fanucci, but by then she was a mother and his wife of 7 years. He started late for Mafia chief, but once his ascension began, he rose quickly. When the Italian community knew about Fanucci's unaliving and who did it, they turned to the new Don to sort out their problems and make their decisions for them. They didn't vote for him. Many probably didn't know him before the Fanucci unaliving, but with that action alone, he was given authority to rule over them. That's how it was done. Mrs. Colombo was being evicted from her apartment, and she sought Vito's, by then the Don's, help. She was a widow and mother to 2 good Italian teenage children who brought home their paychecks to her in a sealed envelope where, as explained on page 208, the whole family sewed buttons on cards at night at slave labor piece rates. What's interesting is the widow is given a name, but in the book, the Don's wife is only referred to as Vito Corleone's wife, even this far into the story. The widow had a dog, and the landowner told her she would have to get rid of the pet, but she didn't, and he ordered her to vacate the apartment. She gave the dog to relatives, but the landowner refused to let them stay. The police would be summoned to put them out. She wanted to stay, and she needed his help. On page 209, Vito Corleone asked her gently, "Why do you ask me to help you?" Mrs. Colombo nodded toward his wife. "She told me to ask you." On page 209, he was surprised. His wife had never questioned him about the clothes he had washed the night he had murdered Fanucci, had never asked him where all the money came from when he was not working. Even now her face was impassive. She knew what her husband did. She was old-world Italian, and it was either her husband joined the Mafia or their lives would be a financial struggle and hardship, just as Mrs. Colombo's life was. She knew not to question her husband, but these small favors she asked from him for people like widows and orphans conveyed not only a woman who had sympathy for people who are weak and vulnerable, but an acknowledgement on her husband's part that he had a power to control others that she was testing in her own limited way. Besides, it was good personal relations for Vito to help out such vulnerable people in minor disputes. His image would be enhanced by preventing a widow and her children from being thrown out into the streets. This would also enhance his wife's status. She was, after all, the wife of a very important man. On page 209, his wife gave him a smile he did not acknowledge, but he felt pleased. By asking these small requests, Mrs. Corleone could also insert her control over the community they oversaw. It was her ability to influence others through her husband. She was more than a wife and mother. She had strength outside the home that belonged to her, albeit wielded through her husband. She understood she couldn't use it irresponsibly, and made it a point to only occasionally ask him to exhibit his power for her. And in return, he did as she asked to her satisfaction, as was his. It was by mutual consent and benefit. Now it's time to return to the beginning of the book, in the first Godfather film, with the wedding of Costanza Corleone, or as who everyone referred to her as, Connie. As described on page 19, Connie was not a quite pretty girl, thin and nervous and certain to become shrewish later in life. But today, transformed by her white bridal gown and eager virginity, she was so radiant as to be almost beautiful. The definition of shrew for Connie is a bad-tempered or aggressively assertive woman. Connie grew up knowing her father and the rest of the men in her family held positions in the Mafia, with her father maintaining a central position, a kingpin. In the patriarchal society she found herself in, her voice was pushed aside and she was told in so many ways to shut up. As Sonny told her at the table at the end of the Godfather film, when Connie first met her future husband, Carlo Rizzi. "He's good looking, isn't he?" Sonny asked Connie as he patted Carlo's face. "Yes," Connie agreed as she cleared her throat. It would be through her family that she would meet prospective men to marry. Depending on the Italian family, the men related to her would also choose her husband for her. In the book A History of Women in America, the writer said while Irish young women were allowed to immigrate to America and live on their own, Italian young women, separated from their parents, were still under the control of their brothers. Connie's hair is in a partial updo, permissible for a young woman her age, and she's wearing a prim outfit with a breech top and black skirt for her father's birthday. After her marriage, she would be expected to put her hair up in a bun to hide the beauty of her hair, something she would only share with her husband after marriage. Connie fussed at her brother to not touch the antipasto until the father saw it, as Sonny jokes around with everyone at the table. He told her to put candles on the cake with Carlo's help. Connie chastised Sonny for talking about the war, and Sonny immediately told her to talk to Carlo. She gives him a stern look, then looks down to acquiesce to his order. Sonny was pushing Connie and Carlo together, and he considered the union good for the family. Sonny had a habit of bringing strays home, and Carlo was described on page 19 as being considered a half-breed, born of a Sicilian father and North Italian mother. In the same country, people were divided, and northern and southern Italians were considered different people, different breeds. Sicilians only trusted their own, and Carlo, from his introduction, was not trusted by the very Sicilian Vito. Carlo knew that, and, not from a powerful enough family himself, the only way he could rise in power in a mafia family was to marry into one. He would soon marry into mafia royalty, and as such the Corleone family would have to take care of him. As for Sonny, Carlo came from Nevada, and the Corleone family were interested in participating in the legal gambling there. But at the time, Vito was only pondering the new profit venture. Carlo had a bit of trouble and had to leave Nevada, but Vito had no trouble cleaning his record once he realized Connie was interested in him. On pages 19 to 20, Connie considered Carlo incredibly handsome. He inherited his blonde hair and blue eyes from his mother's side of the family, and had worked in the open desert while he was very young, heavy laborer's work. Now he had tremendous forearms, and his shoulders bulged in his tuxedo for his wedding. As for Carlo, he was more interested in his wife's silk purse and the money it contained. He would take it from his wife, although she ended up with a black eye trying to fight him for it, but she was willing to give up her virginity. Sonny pinched bridesmaid Lucy Mancini on the cheek, and then goes to his wife to chastise her about watching the children. "You watch yourself, all right," she glared at him. He looked away from her and then casually walked away. Sonny whispered to Lucy, and they separately go upstairs to have privacy in the bathroom. On pages 15 to 16, here at the wedding feast, some young matrons, wide-hipped, wide-mouthed, measured Sonny Corleone with coolly confident eyes. But on this particular day, they were wasting their time. Sonny Corleone, despite the presence of his wife and 3 small children, had plans for his sister's maid of honor, Lucy Mancini. The young girl, fully aware, sat at a garden table in her pink formal gown, a tiara of flowers in her glossy black hair. She had flirted with Sonny in the past week of rehearsals, and squeezed his hand that morning at the altar. A maiden could do no more. In the book, on page 27, in describing Lucy Mancini, in her 2 college love affairs, she had felt nothing, and neither of them lasted for more than a week. Quarreling, her second lover had mumbled something about her being too big down there. Lucy had understood, and for the rest of the school term had refused to go out on any dates. During the summer, preparing for the wedding of her best friend Connie Corleone, Lucy heard the whispered stories about Sonny. One Sunday afternoon in the Corleone kitchen, Sonny's wife gossiped freely. Sandra was a coarse, good-natured woman who had been born in Italy but brought to America as a young child. The book describes her as a large woman, but she has a tiny frame in the movie. Sonny's physical size scared her, and as she later said, after the first year, my insides felt as mushy as macaroni boiled for an hour. She was so grateful Sonny was seeing other women, she lit a candle at the church. Hopefully Sandra was exaggerating, but Lucy was interested. Everyone at the wedding except Connie understood what happened when Lucy and Sonny disappeared. Lucy Mancini had her own side story in the book that had nothing to do with the main storyline. It's really not necessary to go into her life with full detail because it doesn't affect the Corleone family story. She was completely left out of the film until a brief appearance in The Godfather 3, but in the book, Lucy continues to see Sonny until his unaliving. Hagen informs her of what happened and asks her if she is pregnant. She is not, and he said on his orders from Sonny, if something were to happen to him, she received a stipend from the family along with a job when she moves to Nevada, where the family sets up for business. Sonny left no estate. Lucy and his family were taken care of by the Corleone family. She meets a doctor who helps her with her medical problem, and they plan to marry. Lucy changes her appearance. She is still Italian, but becomes more American in her figure and style. In The Godfather 3, Lucy was pregnant and gives birth to Vincent, who is considered an outsider in the family, which children born out of wedlock tend to be treated as. Sonny's wife, Sandra, and the children moved to Florida to be near her parents, and they are taken care of. In reality, the Mafia does not take care of women, as the men unalive each other or go to prison. They are simply left to care for themselves and their children with state assistance, help from their families, or learning to take care of themselves. In the Wise Guy book, later made into the film called Goodfellas, when Henry Hill is sent to prison, his wife Karen is left behind to work odd jobs and to rely on her parents. When she asked for the money other gang members owed to Henry in his absence, she was told to go sign up for welfare at the police station. Amerigo Bonacera, an undertaker, had a request to ask the Don on his daughter's birthday. By tradition, it was meant to be a happy day for him, and he could not refuse anyone's help. His request was for his daughter. He explained on page 30, "America has made my fortune. I gave my daughter her freedom, and yet taught her never dishonor her family. She found a boyfriend, not an Italian. She went to the movies with him. She stayed out late. But he never came to meet her parents. I accepted this without a protest. The fault is mine. 2 months ago, he took her for a drive. He had a masculine friend with him. They made her drink whiskey, and then they tried to take advantage of her. She resisted. She kept her honor. They beat her like an animal. When I went to the hospital, she had 2 black eyes. Her nose was broken. Her jaw was shattered. They had to wire it together. She wept through her pain. Father, Father, why did they do it? Why did they do this to me? And I wept. His daughter would never be beautiful again, meaning she would never attract a good earning husband in the future. Her life was essentially over. Bonacera watched while the legal system allowed the 2 boys to go free on the day of the trial. He went to Vito for revenge, but he was offered justice, or their idea of justice. The boys would be beaten badly, but left to live because his daughter was still alive. Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, the old world style of justice. On page 62 in Hagen's world, the Corleone's world, the physical beauty, the sexual power of women, carried not the slightest weight in worldly matters. It was a private affair, except, of course, in matters of marriage and family disgrace. And with that, the Don went out to join the wedding party. Page 19, Connie Corleone sat in splendor at a special raised table with her groom, the maid of honor, the bridesmaids, and ushers. It was a rustic setting in old Italian style, not to the bride's taste, but Connie had consented to a giddy wedding to please her father because she had displeased him in her choice of a husband. He did not approve of Connie's choice for a husband, but the fact he let her decide over his own objections may have said a lot about Vito's acceptance of the new world, or how he was a reasonable and loving man. In reality, the character Carlo was created to be a bad person and someone who would betray the family, and it sent a message that women like Connie could not be trusted to make decisions about her own life. And although the Don celebrated his daughter's wedding, he never trusted Carlo. He gave him menial jobs, and Carlo in return took his anger out on Connie. On page 34, the first one to see Johnny Fontaine enter the garden was Connie Corleone. She forgot her bridal dignity and screamed, "Johnny!" He was there to show respect to his godfather, but also to ask for a favor. The Godfather was angry at Johnny and expressed his forgiveness with an invitation, something the singer knew he couldn't refuse. Johnny said on page 35, "I'm not rich, Godfather. I'm going down. You were right. I should have never left my wife and children for that S word for a loose woman I married. I don't blame you for getting sore at me." Johnny Fontaine is supposed to be Frank Sinatra. On page 36, Johnny said I was crazy about the B word. The biggest star in Hollywood. She looks like an angel. And you know what she does after a picture? The makeup man does a good job on her face. She lets him bang her. The cameraman made her look extra good. She brings him into her dressing room and gives him a screw. Anybody. She uses her body like I use loose change in my pocket for a tip. A W word for loose woman, made for the devil. Frank Sinatra's second wife was Ava Gardner. The Don asked Johnny about his family, and he sighed. "I took care of them after the divorce. I gave Jenny and the kids more than the court said I should. I go see them once a week. I miss them. As for his second wife, she laughs at him. She can't understand my being jealous. She calls me an old-fashioned guinea. She makes fun of my singing. Before I left, I gave her a good beating, but not in the face because she was making a picture. I gave her cramps. I punched her on the arms and legs like a kid, and she kept laughing at me." The Don told him on page 37, "You left your family, your children without a father, to marry a W word for a woman with loose morals. And you weep because they don't welcome you back with open arms. The W word for a loose woman. You don't hit her in the face because she is making a picture. Then you are amazed when she laughs at you." Johnny Fontaine shrugged. "I can't marry Jenny again. Not the way she wants. I have to gamble, I have to drink, I have to go out with the boys. Beautiful broads run after me, and I never could resist them. Then I used to feel like a heel when I went back to Jenny. Christ, I can't go through all that crap again." The Don tells Johnny to do what he wants, but to be a good father to his children. Johnny says, "Godfather, not all women are like the old Italian wives. Jenny won't stand for it." The Don mocks him and told him it's because he acted like a Finocchio, basically an effeminate male. "You gave her more than the court said. You let women dictate your actions, and they are not competent in this world, though certainly they will be saints in heaven while we men burn in hell." On page 178, he had never forgotten the look on Jenny's face when she found out all about his misfortunes. It had passed over her face only for a second, but that was enough for him never to forget it. It was a look of savage and joyful satisfaction. It was a look that could only make him believe that she had contemptuously hated him all those years. She quickly recovered and offered him a cool but polite sympathy. He had pretended to accept it. During the next few days, he had gone to see 3 of the girls he had liked the most over the years, girls he had remained friends with and sometimes still slept with in a camaraderie way, girls he had done everything in his power to help, girls to whom he had given the equivalent of hundreds of thousands of dollars in gifts or job opportunities. On their faces, he had caught the same fleeting look of savage satisfaction. Although Johnny thought he was a nice guy to women, these women would say otherwise. His first wife wanted a husband who would come home in the evenings and not cheat on her. No amount of money could ever rid her of the resentment and bitterness she felt towards him. The other girls he slept with in exchange for gifts and job opportunities. There really wasn't a choice. They exchanged the use of their bodies for currency. On page 62, it's revealed what Johnny did to ruin his career. He took the woman of a famous Hollywood movie producer. Jack Woltz explained, "He ruined one of my most valuable protégés. For 5 years I had this girl under training, singing, dancing, acting lessons. I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars. I was going to make her a star. I'll even be more frank, just to show you I'm not a hard-hearted man, that it wasn't about dollars and cents. That girl was beautiful, and she was the greatest piece of A word I've ever had, and I've had them all over the world. She could suck you out like a water pump. Then Johnny comes along with that olive oil voice and guinea charm, and she runs off. She threw it all away just to make me ridiculous. A man in my position, Mr. Hagen, can't afford to look ridiculous." In the movie, they add that she was young and innocent. The sideman for the Don and his unofficial adopted son Hagen was not impressed with Hollywood. On page 55, the reception room was very plush, very comfortable. and on a plum-colored couch opposite him was the most beautiful child Hagen had ever seen. She was no more than 11 or 12, dressed in a very expensive but simple way as a grown woman. She had incredibly golden hair, huge, deep, sea blue eyes, and a fresh raspberry red mouth. She was guarded, obviously, by her mother, who tried to stare Hagen down with a cold arrogance that made him want to punch her in the face. The angel child and the dragon mother, Hagen thought, returning the mother's cold stares. On page 63, while waiting in the floodlit colonnade of the mansion for his car, Hagen saw two women about to enter the long limousine already parked in the driveway. They were the beautiful 12-year-old blonde girl and her mother he had seen in Waltz's office that morning. But now the girl's exquisitely cut mouth seemed to have smeared into a thick pink mass. Her sea blue eyes were filmed over, and when she walked down the steps toward the open car, her long legs tottered like a crippled foal's. Her mother supported the child, helping her into the car, hissing commands into her ear. The mother's head turned for a quick, furtive look at Hagen, and he saw in her eyes a burning, hawk-like triumph. Then she, too, disappeared into the limousine. In the film, as Tom is leaving Waltz's house, he sees a young girl, now dressed as a woman, standing on the balcony. She looks desperate. Her mother takes her back to a room she is not supposed to leave. The beautiful young girl in the film looks older than 12, and her mother is beside her when Waltz gives the girl a small pony. She kissed him in front of photographers, and her mother said, "Wasn't it nice of Mr. Waltz to give you such a lovely present?" Michael is a prodigal son who finally returned home after serving in the war. On page 17, to return for the wedding of his sister and to show his own future wife to them, the washed-out rag of an American girl. On the same page beside him sat the American girl everyone heard about, but whom no one had seen until this day. He had, of course, shown the proper respect and introduced her to everyone at the wedding, including his family. They were not impressed with her. She was too thin, she was too fair. Her face was too sharply intelligent for a woman, her manner too free for a maiden. Her name, too, was outlandish to their ears. She called herself Kay Adams. If she had told them that her family had settled in America 200 years ago and her name was a common one, they would have shrugged. The Kay Adams in the movie is exactly the Kay Adams of the book, tall and slim and pale with delicate features. In Wise Guy on page 71, Henry said of him and his future wife Karen, "We started going to weddings. Some of the Vario kids were getting married at the time, and that sort of threw us together even more closely. In my upbringing, if you took a girl to a wedding, it was important. Michael even pulled Kay into a family photo as an expression of his devotion to her." On page 18, Michael Corleone was amusing Kay Adams by telling her little stories about some of the more colorful wedding guests. He was in turn amused by her finding these people exotic, and as always charmed by her intense interest in anything new and foreign in her experience. On page 24, Michael had brought Kay to the wedding so that she would slowly and perhaps without too much of a shock absorb the truth about his father. In the movie, Kay spots Luca Brasi, and with female instincts, she is fearful of him. There is a story in the book that explains how mafia men are made. A servant woman in Michael's inner circle during his exile in Italy named Filomena told the story about how Luca Brasi came to be. 30 years before, Filomena had been a midwife in New York City on 10th Avenue, servicing the Italian community. The women were always pregnant, and she prospered. One late night, Luca Brasi, a bachelor, knocked on her door, and she was frightened. On pages 347 to 349, he told Filomena that there was a woman about to give birth, that the house was out of the neighborhood some distance away, and that she would have to come with him. Filomena immediately sensed something amiss. Rossi's brutal face looked almost like that of a madman that night. He was obviously in the grip of some demon. She tried to protest that she attended only women whose history she knew, but he shoved a handful of green dollars in her hand and ordered her roughly to come with him. She was too frightened to refuse. In the street was a Ford, its driver of the same feather as Luca Brasi. The drive was no more than 30 minutes to a small frame house in Long Island City, right over the bridge. A two-family house, but obviously now tenanted only by Brasi and his gang. for there were some other ruffians in the kitchen playing cards and drinking. Rossi took Philomena up the stairs to a bedroom. In the bed was a pretty young girl who looked Irish, her face painted, her hair red, and with a belly swollen like a sow. The poor girl was so frightened. When she saw Rossi, she turned her head away in terror. Yes, terror. And indeed the look of hatred on Rossi's evil face was the most frightening thing she had ever seen in her life. Here Philomena crossed herself again. To make a long story short, Rossi left the room. Two of his men assisted the midwife, and the baby was born. The mother was exhausted and went into a deep sleep. Rossi was summoned, and Philomena, who wrapped the newborn in an extra blanket, extended the bundle to him and said, "If you're the father, take her. My work is finished." Rossi glared at her, malevolent. Insanity stamped on his face. "Yes, I'm the father," he said, "but I don't want any of that race to live. Take it down to the basement and throw it into the furnace." For a moment Philomena thought she had not understood him properly. She was puzzled by his use of the word race. Did he mean the girl was not Italian? Or did he mean because the girl was obviously of the lowest type, a W word for a loose woman, in short? Or did he mean that anything springing from his loins he forbade to live? And then she was sure he was making a brutal joke. She said shortly, "It's your child. Do what you want." And she tried to hand him the bundle. At this time the exhausted mother awoke and turned to her side to face them. She was just in time to see Rossi thrust violently at the bundle, crushing the newborn infant against Philomena's chest. She called out, "Luke, Luke, I'm sorry," and Rossi turned to face her. "It was terrible," Philomena said, "now so terrible. They were like two mad animals. They were not human. The hatred they bore each other blazed through the room. Nothing else, not even the newborn infant, existed for them at that moment. And yet there was a strange passion, a bloody demoniacal lust, so unnatural you knew they were damned forever." Then Luca Brasi turned back to Philomena and said harshly, "Do what I tell you. I'll make you rich." Philomena could not speak in her terror. She shook her head. Finally she managed to whisper, "You do it. You're the father. Do it, if you like." But Brasi didn't answer. Instead he drew a knife from the inside of his shirt. "I'll cut your throat," he said. She must have gone into shock then, because the next thing she remembered they were all standing in the basement of the house in front of the square iron furnace. Philomena was holding the blanketed baby, which had not made a sound. Maybe she had cried. Maybe if I'd been shrewd enough to pinch it, Philomena said, that monster would have shown mercy. One of the men must have opened the furnace door. The fire was now visible. And then she was alone with the bars in the basement, with its sweaty pipes, its mousy odor. Rossi had his knife out again, and there could be no doubting he would kill her. There were the flames. There were Barsi's eyes. His face was the gargoyle of the devil. It was not human. It was not sane. He pushed her toward the open furnace door. At this point, Philomena fell silent. She folded her bony hands in her lap and looked directly at Michael. He knew what she wanted, how she wanted to tell him without using her voice. He asked gently, "Did you do it?" And she nodded. Luca Brasi unalived the Irish woman 2 days later, and then tried to unalive himself. Philomena told Don Corleone what happened, and the Godfather moved in to protect a man he would bring into his inner circle. It was the world Michael's family inhabited, a world of sociopaths. Of the Godfather himself, Kay does not seem to realize Michael's father is the most dangerous of them all. She thinks it's kindness when Vito takes Hagen in as a child. On page 26, "That's really romantic," she said. "Your father must be a warm-hearted person to adopt someone like that when he has so many children of his own." Michael did not bother to point out that immigrant Italians consider 4 children a small family. She believed the Don was simply a shady businessman. Kay is escorted on Michael's orders back to her hotel room. On pages 48 to 49, she found both men wildly exotic. Their speech was movie Brooklynese, and they treat her with exaggerated courtliness. During the ride, she chatted casually with both men, and she was surprised when they spoke of Michael with unmistakable affection and respect. He had led her to believe that he was an alien in his father's world. They told her Michael would surely inherit the family business. "What business is that?" Kay asked in the most natural way. "The biggest importer of olive oil in America," they answered. It was a Corleone's shell company. She was escorted directly to her room, and one of the goons asked what name she was registered under. Mr. and Mrs. Michael Corleone. They decided he was doing the job on her, or they were already married in secret. Michael and Kay had planned to elope together. Kay said her parents would think she was pregnant. Michael said his parents would think the same thing. Michael had to lie to his family and tell them he wasn't in New York in order to share some time with Kay. They would not be allowed to share a room in his parents' home. Kay told him, "Michael, what a good fibber you are." He had spent the war years fighting in the Pacific, and on those bloody islands he had dreamed of a girl like Kay Adams, of a beauty like her, a fair and fragile body, milky-skinned, and electrified with passion. Kay was a representation of something for Michael, something new and not from where he came from. She was the New World America. She was a step away from the family he grew up in and resented, the way they controlled his life and destiny. He wanted to get away from them and choose his own path in life. On page 78, Kay asked Michael, "Do you think your father will approve of me?" Michael said gently, "That's not the real question. Will your parents approve of me?" Kay shrugged. "I don't care," she said. What neither of them mentioned was the fact that Michael would have to cut his close ties with his family. They both understood that Michael had already done so to some extent, and yet they both felt guilty about this fact. They planned to finish college, seeing each other on weekends, and living together during summer vacations. It seemed like a happy life. "After we're married, will you beat me, then steal a star for a present?" Kay asked him. Michael laughed. "I'm going to be a mathematics professor," he said. Then he saw the newspaper. His father had nearly been unalived, and everything had changed. On pages 85 to 86, Sonny goes to the mall and calls out for his mother. She was in the kitchen frying peppers, and when she saw Sonny, she knew she had to sit down. His mother looked at him steadily for a moment, then asked in Italian, "Have they shot him?" Sonny nodded. His mother bowed her head for a moment. This was not the first time she thought she had been made a widow. "He was in the hospital. He's hurt, but he's still alive," her son explained to her. Kay called Michael and asked him how his father was. Michael and Kay talked. "I love you," Kay said. "Yeah, I know," Michael responds. "Tell me you love me," Kay asks. "I can't talk." "Say it," she pleads. "Yeah, I'll see you tonight." "Hey, Mike, why don't you tell that nice girl you love her?" one of his father's men teased him. On page 113, "He'll be okay," Michael told her. "Can I come with you when you visit him in the hospital?" Kay asked. Michael laughed. She had remembered him telling her how important it was to do such things, if you wanted to get along with the old Italians. "This is a special case," he said. "If the newspaper guys get a hold of your name and background, you'll be on page 3 of the Daily News. Girl from old Yankee family mixed up with the son of a big mafia chief. How would your parents like that?" Kay said dryly, "My parents never read the Daily News." Again there was an awkward pause, and then she said, "You're okay, aren't you, Mike? You're not in any danger." Mike laughed again. "I'm known as the sissy of the Corleone family. They plan on meeting up for dinner later." He told her, "Just be ready." She gave him an excited laugh. "I'll be ready," she said. "Aren't I always?" "Yes, you are," he said. "That's why you're my best girl." She told him she loved him, but he couldn't say it back to her. In the movie, the Italian men around him knew he left off the words of devotion and picked on him about it. He told Kay his father's shooting had been more of an accident. He had wanted to leave his family, but he couldn't do it then, while his father was shot and so much was happening with his family. He told Kay most of what was printed about his father was untrue. She believed him. She wanted to believe him, so she did. On page 120, he loved her. He trusted her, but he could never tell her anything about his father or his family. She was an outsider. They make love after dinner, and he's happy how she always was so willing to please him. On page 121, he told her to go back to the little hick town she came from and to think things over. He didn't want her involved in his family's business. He told her he loved her, and he walked out the door. She wouldn't see him again for 3 years. Now in the movie, Kay and Michael have dinner. "When will I see you again?" she asked. "Go back to New Hampshire, and I'll call you at your parents' house," Michael says. She repeats, "When will I see you again, Michael?" "I don't know," he tells her, and he leaves. Two detectives visit Kay's home, and she explains she had no contact with Michael since the last night she saw him. They warn her not to help him, and she informed them she was engaged to him. We know Michael Corleone did the shooting. Kay laughed. Her laughter was so unaffected, so incredulous, that the officers were impressed. They asked her how long she had known him. She said over a year. The detective informed her on page 233. We know you two have been shacking up together. We have the hotel records and witnesses. If we let the information slip to the newspapers, your father and mother would feel pretty lousy. Real respectable people like them wouldn't think much of a daughter shacking up with a gangster. If you don't come clean right now, I'll call your old man in here and give it to him straight. Kay herself called her father in, and the detective informed the pastor of the only Baptist church in town that his daughter was involved with a hoodlum. They had been registered together as man and wife in hotels. Is she a mole? Mr. Adams asked detectives. They didn't respond. He was only joking. Even sheltered people like the Adams would read about mafia activity in the newspapers. It was constantly reported on. Great sensationalism. Kay's father saw the detectives to the door and accompanied Kay to lunch with his wife. Kay was crying to herself, partly to relieve herself from the strain of the situation, but also the unconditional love of her father, who was not an emotional man. She realized how her mother was never in disarray, and had always been a little too disinterested in her. She held Kay at arm's length. Her parents knew about Michael all along. You young people are so mysterious. You think you're so clever, her mother explained. They had opened Kay's mail and read Michael's letters to her. She was grateful they didn't read the letters to him. She was angry. How could they? Mr. Adams smiled at her. I debated which was the greater sin, opening your mail or going in ignorance of some hazard my only child might be incurring. The voice was simple and virtuous. Mrs. Adams said between mouthfuls of boiled chicken, After all, my dear, you are terribly innocent for your age. We had to be aware. And you never spoke about him. She asked Kay, by the way, has Michael gotten in touch with you? No, Kay said, and she didn't believe Michael was guilty of anything. Her parents looked at each other from across the table. On page 235, then Mr. Adams said gently, If he's not guilty and he's vanished, then perhaps something else happened to him. At first, Kay was confused. Then she realized what her father meant and ran from the table to her room. In the movie, Kay went looking for Michael at the mall, and Hagen spoke to her. In the book, Kay visited the mall, a row of homes the Corleones owned, and wanted to know if anyone knew anything about Michael. Hagen explained he could tell her nothing. He could not accept a letter written by her to him. As she was leaving, she ran into a woman she recognized. On page 236, a short, stout woman dressed in black. Kay recognized her as Michael's mother. She held out her hand and said, How are you, Mrs. Corleone? The woman's small black eyes darted at her for a moment. Then the wrinkled, leathery, olive-skinned face broke into a small, curt smile of greeting that was yet, in some curious way, truly friendly. Ah, you Mikey's little girl, Mrs. Corleone said. She had a heavy Italian accent. Kay could barely understand her. She made Kay some coffee with bread, cheese, and salami. Hagen told his mother figure they couldn't give Kay any information about Michael. On page 236, Mrs. Corleone gave him a look of withering contempt. You going to tell me what to do? My husband don't tell me what to do. God have mercy on him. She crossed herself. Mrs. Corleone told Kay Michael would be in hiding for years. You go home to your family and find a nice young fellow and get married, she advised the young woman. You forget about Mikey. He no the man for you anymore. Michael's own mother admitted Michael unalived a man in cold blood to her in so many words. Yet Kay didn't listen to her. On page 238, Carlo was watching Connie watch him and was aware he looked different from the men she was surrounded with. As he described, the greasy, dark gains of a husband, the ones usually found in the inner circle of her father's hard guys he kept around him. He considered himself stronger, yet he couldn't move up in power. They were living in a small apartment, and his apartment in Nevada was bigger. He was not benefiting from the marriage. Connie had to have known it too. He took his anger out on Connie. On page 239, she was getting dressed up in the real New York City Ginzo style that he hated. A silk, flowered pattern dress with belt, showy bracelets and earrings, flouncy sleeves. She looked 20 years older. Where the hell are you going? He asked. She was going to see her father. Is Sonny still running the show? He wanted to know. What show? She asked with a bland look. She had grown up in the Mafia. Mafia women knew how to feign ignorance. He was furious. You lousy little guinea B-word. Don't talk to me like that, or I'll beat that kid right out of your belly. He slapped her across the face until her upper lip split open with blood and puffed up. She ran to the bedroom and locked the door. Her face was bruised and swollen, and when he saw her later, he knew it was best she didn't go. On page 240, he was in a good mood. Slapping the spoiled little B-word around always made him feel good. Dissolved some of the frustration he felt at being treated so badly by the Corleones. Connie went to her parents when Carlo first hit her, but her parents were coolly unsympathetic and curiously amused. Her mother expressed a bit of concern, but Vito told her on page 240, "She is my daughter," he had said, "but now she belongs to her husband. He knows his duties. Even the King of Italy didn't dare meddle with the relationship of husband and wife. Go home and learn how to behave, so he will not beat you." Connie had said angrily to her father, "Did you ever hit your wife?" She was his favorite and could speak to him so imprudently. He had answered, "She never gave me a reason to beat her," and her mother nodded and smiled. In another part of the book, Vito is said to hold Michael as his favorite child, but that's for operating a family business. Personally, the Don favored his only daughter, who dutifully looked after her parents as they aged. A son is a son until he takes a wife, but a daughter is a daughter for the rest of her life. Once Carlo realized he could get away with hitting Connie, he dropped the perfect husband act he was playing for weeks when he was worried the first time he left marks on her, and struck her whenever he wanted. Even taking the silk purse money and blowing it didn't seem to concern the Don. "I would have done the same if my wife had been so presumptuous as you," he told his daughter. In private, Vito and his wife were concerned about Carlo, but then Connie became pregnant, then the marriage seemed like a necessity. Connie even claimed she wanted a divorce. On page 241, for the first time in her life, the Don was angry with her. "He is the father of your child. What can a child come to in this world if he has no father?" he asked to Connie. Sonny flew into a rage about it, but the Don demanded he restrain himself. Instead, Sonny stayed away from Carlo, knowing he couldn't control himself. As it happened, Sonny went to visit Connie and saw the beating Carlo gave her. He knew, just from hearing her voice, there was something wrong. On page 242, the fright in her voice stunned him. His kid sister had always been fresh and snotty, tough as anybody in the family. What the hell had happened to her? She opened the door and saw for himself. She knew her older brother's temper and feared it. She tried to take the blame for the fight. Sonny was silent with her. He didn't want to upset her. He called the doctor. She was 7 months pregnant. Then Sonny left and found Carlo Rizzo to beat him up. Connie would soon have another fight with Carlo. She was still pregnant, and he attempted to soften his blows because of her condition, but it only fed her rage. His girlfriend called her home to call off the date. She made dinner, veal and peppers, but he changed his mind about eating. She threw the food at the wall. On page 263, Carlo went back into the bedroom, and when he came out, he was holding his belt, doubled in his hand. "Clean it up," he said, and there was no mistaking the menace in his voice. She stood there not moving, and he swung the belt against her heavy padded hips, the leather stinging but not really hurting. Connie ran to the kitchen and threatened him with a long bread knife. On page 263, Carlo laughed. "Even the female Corleones are unalivers," he said. She aimed the weapon at his groin, but she wasn't strong or fast enough. He continued to beat her face, and when he fell asleep drunk on the couch, Connie called her parents home and talked to her mother. Sonny took the phone and was in a rage over his sister's beating. When Sonny went to take revenge for his sister, he was assassinated. On page 269, Hagen got control of himself and picked up the phone. He called Connie's number. It rang for a long time before Connie answered in a whisper. Hagen spoke to her gently. "Connie, this is Tom. Wake your husband up. I have to talk to him." Connie said in a low, frightened voice, "Tom, is Sonny coming here?" "No," Hagen said. "Sonny's not coming there. Don't worry about that. Just wake Carlo up and tell him it's very important I speak with him." Connie's voice was weepy. "Tom, he beat me up. I'm afraid he'll hurt me again if he knows I called home." Hagen said gently, "He won't. He'll talk to me and I'll straighten him out. Everything will be okay. Tell him it's very important he come to the phone, okay?" Hagen told Carlo Sonny was gone. He didn't want Connie to know because she would blame herself for telling Sonny what happened. Someone from her family would tell her tomorrow. Hagen told Carlo to be a good husband, at least until the baby arrived. Carlo got the message. Although Hagen put off telling the Don what happened to Sonny, he already knew something bad occurred. So did his wife. She was crying, weeping before she went to bed. She already knew her son was unalived. The way these men unalive each other, she was prepared for a funeral at any time. After Michael unalived the men, he was in exile in Italy, where he understands the men in his family, in his father's inner circle, more, along with the burden the Italian women suffer. His mother's resignation and acceptance of her role. Explained on page 324. The province held the town of Corleone, whose name the Don had taken when he emigrated to America so long ago. But there were no longer any of the Don's relatives alive. The women had died of old age. All the men had been killed in vendettas, or had also migrated either to America, Brazil, or to some other province on the Italian mainland. He was to learn later that this small poverty-stricken town had the highest unaliving rate of any place in the world. To understand the country is to understand Michael and his transformation from good to evil. A country like Italy let such corruption breed. On page 326, the land-owning barons and the princes of the Catholic Church exercised absolute power over the shepherds and farmers. The police were the instruments of their power, and so to be identified with them, to be called a policeman, is the foulest insult one Sicilian can hurl at each other. Faced with the savagery of this absolute power, the suffering people learn never to betray their anger and their hatred for fear of being crushed. They learn never to make themselves vulnerable by uttering any sort of threat, since giving such a warning ensured a quick reprisal. Justice had never been forthcoming from the authorities, and so the people had always gone to the Robin Hood Mafia, and to some extent the Mafia still fulfilled this role. People turned to the local capo mafioso for help in every emergency. He was their social worker, their district captain, ready with a basket of food and a job, their protector. What Michael learned in the months that followed was that the Mafia in Sicily had become the illegal arm of the rich, and even the auxiliary police of their legal and political structure became a degenerate capitalist structure, anti-communist, anti-liberal, placing its own taxes on every form of business endeavor, no matter how small. Michael Corleone understood for the first time why men like his father chose to become thieves and murderers rather than members of the legal society. The poverty and fear and degradation were too awful to be acceptable to any man of spirit, and in America some immigrating Sicilians had assumed there would be an equally cruel authority. Dr. Taza offered to operate on Michael's face, but he knew better. As stated on page 327, he was the worst doctor in Sicily. Dr. Taza's medical degree wasn't with the paper it was written on. It was given to him by the Mafia chief in Sicily, and this too showed how the Mafia in Sicily was cancerous to the society it inhabited. Merit meant nothing. Talent meant nothing. Work meant nothing. The Mafia Godfather gave you your profession as a gift. Sicily was a land of ghosts. On page 329, Michael often thought of Kay, of her smile, her body, and always felt a twinge of conscience at leaving her so brutally without a word of farewell. And then he meets Apollonia. Michael first feels what Sicilians call the thunderbolt. On pages 332 to 333, beyond the orange grove, lay the green ribbon fields of a baronial state. Down the road from the grove was a villa so Roman it looked as if it had been dug up from the ruins of Pompeii. It was a little palace with a huge marble portico and fluted Grecian columns, and through those columns came a bevy of village girls flanked by two stout matrons dressed in black. They were from the village, and they obviously fulfilled their ancient duty to the local baron by cleaning his villa and otherwise preparing it for his winter sojourn. Now they were going into the fields to pick the flowers with which they would fill the rooms. They were gathering the pink sola, purple wisteria, mixing them with orange and lemon blossoms. The girls, not seeing the men resting in the orange grove, came closer and closer. They were dressed in cheap, gaily printed frocks that clung to their bodies. They were still in their teens, but with the full womanliness sun-drenched flesh ripened into so quickly. 3 or 4 of them started chasing one girl, chasing her into the grove. The girl being chased held a bunch of huge purple grapes in her left hand, and with her right hand was picking the grapes off the cluster and throwing them at her pursuers. She had a crown of ringlet hair as purple-black as the grapes, and her body seemed to be bursting out of its skin. Just short of the grove she poised, startled, her eyes having caught the alien color of the men's shirts. She stood there, up on her toes, poised like a deer to run. She was very close now, close enough for the men to see every feature of her face. She was all ovals, oval-shaped eyes, the bones of her face, the contour of her brow. Her skin was an X size, the dark creaminess in her eyes enormous dark violet or brown, but dark with long heavy lashes, shadowed her lovely face. Her mouth was rich without being gross, sweet without being weak, and dyed dark red with the juice of the grapes. She was so incredibly lovely that Fabrizio murmured, "Jesus Christ, take my soul, I'm dying," as a joke, but the words came out a little too hoarsely, as if she had heard him. The girl came down off her toes and rolled away from them and fled back to her pursuers. Her haunches moved like an animal's beneath the tight print of her dress, as pagan and as innocently lustful. When she reached her friends, she rolled around again, and her face was like a dark hollow against the field of bright flowers. She extended an arm. The handful of grapes pointed toward the grove. The girls fled laughing, with black-clad stout matrons scolding them on. In the movie, Apollonia is described as more Greek than Italian, as the actress portraying her appears to be. Her features are softer and her skin is lighter. Even her body shape is smaller. In the book, however, Apollonia sounds all Italian, with dark hair and eyes, and very voluptuous from her lips to her body type. Since she was meant to represent the old world of Sicily Michael found himself in, the more Italian-looking Apollonia makes more sense. Unfortunately, American taste would find the Greek Apollonia more appealing. Michael was left feeling dizzy and basically what is referred to in the South as being in heat. Fabrizio told him he felt the thunderbolt and he was lucky to feel such an emotion. It was the first time Michael felt such desire. On page 334, it was nothing like his adolescent crushes. It was nothing like the love he had for Kay, a love based as much on her sweetness, her intelligence, and the polarity of the fair and dark. This was an overwhelming desire for possession. This was an erasable printing of the girl's face on his brain, and he knew she would haunt his memory every day of his life if he did not possess her. His life had become simplified, focused on one point. Everything else was unworthy of even a moment's attention. During his exile, he had always thought of Kay, but he felt they could never again be lovers or even friends. He was, after all was said, an unaliver, a mafioso who had made his bones, but now Kay was wiped completely from his consciousness. They go to the village to find the identity of the girl, and the girl's father was a cafe owner. They inquired him about her. The man was outraged at first and threatened them with the girl's two older big brothers. But when the father, Mr. Vitelli, found out Michael's intentions were honorable, and he was very wealthy, then he changed his mind. Michael is invited to their home for dinner on Sunday. He is not sure if the girl is accepting of him. Michael said on page 338, "She may not be able to stand the sight of me, and she's a very young girl. She'll think me old." He saw the two men smiling at him. The book does not give Apollonia's exact age, but about 15 or 16 would be a good estimation. Hopefully not 13, since she looks very mature in the movie, although a few years in age would not make that much of a difference. Michael would be a good 8-10 years older. A young woman at 18 not married would be considered a spinster. Nor does she get to choose her husband. It is her family who chooses for her, particularly her father. The Vitelli family were considered middle class in Sicily. On page 340, he understood for the first time the classical jealousy of the Italian male. He was at the moment ready to kill anyone who touched this girl, who tried to claim her, take her away from him. He wanted to own her as wildly as a miser wants to own gold coins, as hungrily as a sharecropper wants to own his own land. Nothing was going to stop him from owning this girl, possessing her, locking her in a house and keeping her prisoner only for himself. He didn't want anyone even to see her. When she turned to smile at one of her brothers, Michael gave that young man a murderous look without even realizing it. The family could see it was a classical case of the thunderbolt, and they were reassured. This young man would be putty in their daughter's hands until they were married. After that, of course, things would change, but it didn't matter. By then she would be safely tucked away in a Catholic marriage, and Michael would be responsible for caring for her as if she were a child. And getting pregnant and having children would seal her fate. On page 341, he is captivated by her youth, her innocence, and her beauty. But what happens to Apollonia? As she loses her look, her innocence disappears, and she is no longer young. What happens in the relationship when Apollonia loses what attracted Michael to her in the first place. It's never answered in the book or the film because of the demise of Apollonia. But in the real world of the Mafia, these men take mistresses and spend long hours away from home, with the wives attending to the children in the home. At least you will be taken care of for life. That's all that seems to matter. As a gift, Michael gave her a heavy gold chain to be worn as a necklace. On page 341, it was no less a proposal of matrimony, or rather the signal there would be an intention to propose matrimony. For a long time, women were not allowed to own any real property like homes or land or even credit, and could only own what was considered inferior property like slaves, furnishings, clothes, and jewelry. They were possessions that depreciated in value, but jewelry could hold its value and possibly increase over time. The gold jewelry was part of her personal security. It was also a symbol of how much a man paid to have her and how valuable Apollonia was to Michael. On page 341, Apollonia still had not touched her present. Her mother held it up for her to see, and she raised those long lashes for a moment, and then she looked directly at Michael, her doe-like brown eyes grave, and said "Grazia." It was the first time he had heard her voice. It had all the velvety softness of youth and shyness, and it set Michael's ears to ringing. Apollonia would continue to receive visits from Michael up to her wedding, which happened very quickly, 2 weeks after the meeting. She became less shy around him and wore the necklace he gave her. On page 342, he walked with her up the hill, her mother close behind them. But it was impossible for the two young people to keep their bodies from brushing against each other, and once Apollonia stumbled and fell against him, so he had to hold her, and her body, so warm and alive in his hands, started a deep wave of blood rising in his body. They could not see the mother behind them smiling because their daughter was a mountain goat and had not stumbled on this path since she was an infant in diapers, and smiling because this was the only way this young man was going to get his hands on her daughter until the marriage. On page 343, the wedding feast went on until midnight, but bride and groom would leave before that in the Alfa Romeo. When that time came, Michael was surprised to find that the mother was coming with him to Corleone Villa at the request of the bride. The father explained the girl was young, a virgin, a little frightened. She would need someone to talk to on the morning following her bridal night, to put her on the right track if things went wrong. These matters could sometimes get very tricky. On page 344, and now he had her alone, now that he legally possessed her, now that there was no barrier to his enjoying that body and face he had dreamed about every night. Michael could not bring himself to approach her. He left the room to give her time to prepare for him. As it turns out in the book, the honeymoon was a complete success, and Apollonia was a bold lover, willing to satisfy her husband. On page 345, that night and the weeks that followed, Michael Corleone came to understand the premium put on virginity by socially primitive people. It was a period of sensuality that he had never experienced, a sensuality mixed with a feeling of masculine power. Apollonia, in those first days, became almost his slave, given trust, given affection. A young, full-blooded girl, aroused from virginity to erotic awareness, was as delicious as an exactly ripe fruit. Michael could not get enough of Apollonia's beautifully sculpted body, her honey-colored skin, her huge brown eyes burning with passion. Her virginal passion matched his nuptial lust, and often it was dawn when they fell asleep, when they fell into an exhausted slumber. Sounds like a man's fantasy. In chapter 24, Michael and Apollonia are getting ready to return to in chapter 24, Michael and Apollonia are getting ready to return to America. The marriage made Michael even more dangerous. It brought him out into the open more. "Get the car," Michael called down to him. "I'll be leaving in 5 minutes. Where's Carlo?" "Carlo is having coffee in the kitchen," Fabrizio said. "Is your wife coming with you?" Michael squinted down at him. It occurred to him that Fabrizio had been following Apollonia too much with his eyes the last few weeks. Not that he would dare ever to make an advance toward the wife of a friend of the Don's. In Sicily, there was no surer road to death. Michael said coldly, "No, she's going home to her family first. She'll join us in a few days." He watched Fabrizio hurry into the stone hut that served as a garage for the Alfa Romeo. On pages 352 to 353, Michael asked, "Where's Apollonia?" Carlo's face broke into an amused grin. "She's sitting in the driver's seat of the car, dying to step on the gas. She'll be a real American woman before she gets to America." It was unheard of for one of the peasant women in Sicily to attempt driving a car, but Michael sometimes let Apollonia guide the Alfa Romeo around the inside of the villa walls, always beside her, however, because she sometimes stepped on the gas when she meant to step on the brake. Michael laughed. He went out the kitchen entrance, and the smell of lemon blossoms penetrated even his sinus-filled nose. He saw Apollonia wave to him from the car just 10 paces from the villa's driveway, and then he realized she was motioning him to stay where he was, that she meant to drive the car to where he stood, but there was no sign of Fabrizio. At that moment, without any conscious reasoning process, everything came together in his mind, and Michael shouted to the girl, "No, no!" But his shout was drowned in a roar of the tremendous explosion as Apollonia switched on the ignition. The kitchen door shattered into fragments, and Michael was hurled along the wall of the villa for a good 10 feet. He was conscious just long enough to see that nothing remained of the Alfa Romeo but its 4 wheels and the steel shafts which held them together. Apollonia had been 4 months pregnant. In the movie, Michael returns to seek out Kay. Kay is with a group of students guiding them along the street when Michael confronts her. The look she gives him is both with loss and astonishment. "How long have you been back?" she asked him. "I've been back a year," he said. "Longer than that." Her look disintegrates into pain. He told her he's working for his father. "But you're not like him," Kay said, remembering the man she knew when Michael first left. He told her he was not going to become his father. Michael explains to her his father is like all powerful men, including the president. Kay called Michael naive. "Other powerful men don't unalive people," Kay said. "Who's being naive?" he told her. "The old way his father did business is dying out. Michael will change things. He'll make the family business respectable, legitimate. He'll change things." Michael asked Kay to trust him. He asked her to marry him. Kay believed it was too late. Michael said it was important for them to have a life together, to have children together, and he needed her. He told her he loved her. In the book, it's Kay who seeks out Michael. Throughout Chapter 25, when Kay Adams received her college degree, she took a job teaching grade school in her New Hampshire hometown. The first 6 months after Michael vanished, she made weekly telephone calls to his mother, asking about him. Mrs. Corleone was very friendly and always wound up saying, "You a very nice girl. You forget about Mikey and find a nice husband." Kay was not offended at her bluntness and understood that the mother spoke out of concern for her as a young girl in an impossible situation. When her first school term ended, she decided to go to New York to buy some decent clothes and to see some old college girlfriends. She thought also about looking for some sort of interesting job in New York. She had lived like a spinster for almost 2 years, reading and teaching, refusing dates, refusing to go out at all, even though she had given up making calls to Long Beach. She knew she couldn't keep that up. She was becoming irritable and unhappy, but she had always believed Michael would write her or send her a message of some sort. That he had not done so humiliated her. It saddened her that he was so distrustful, even of her. She took an early train and was checked into her hotel by mid-afternoon. Her girlfriends worked, and she didn't want to bother them at their jobs. She planned to call them at night, and she didn't really feel like going shopping after the exhausting train trip. Being alone in the hotel room, remembering all those times she and Michael had used hotel rooms to make love, gave her a feeling of desolation. It was that more than anything else that gave her the idea of calling Michael's mother out in Long Beach. The phone was answered by a rough, masculine voice, atypical to her New York accent. Kay asked to speak to Mrs. Corleone. There was a few minutes' silence, and then Kay heard the heavy, accented voice asking who it was. Kay was a little embarrassed now. "This is Kay Adams, Mrs. Corleone," she said. "Do you remember me?" "Oh, sure I remember you," Mrs. Corleone said. "How come you no call up no more? You get a married?" "Oh, no," Kay said. "I've been busy." She was surprised at the mother obviously being annoyed that she had stopped calling. "Have you heard anything from Michael? Is he all right?" There was silence at the other end of the phone. Then Mrs. Corleone's voice came strong. "Mikey is at home. He no call you up. He no see you." Kay felt her stomach go weak from shock, and a humiliating desire to weep. Her voice broke a little when she asked, "How long has he been home?" Mrs. Corleone said, 6 months. "Oh, I see," Kay said. And she did. She felt hot waves of shame that Michael's mother knew he was treating her so cheaply. And then she was angry. Angry at Michael, at his mother. Angry at all foreigners, Italians who didn't have the common courtesy to keep up a decent show of friendship, even if a love affair was over. Did Michael know she would be concerned for him as a friend even if he no longer wanted her for a bed companion, even if he no longer wanted to marry her? Did he think she was one of those poor, benighted Italian girls who would unalive themselves or make a scene after giving up her virginity and then being thrown over. But she kept her voice as cool as possible. I see. Thank you very much, she said. I'm glad Michael is home again and all right. I just wanted to know. I won't call you again. Mrs. Corleone's voice came impatiently over the phone, as if she had heard nothing that Kay had said. You want to see Mikey? You come out here now. Give him a nice surprise. You take a taxi, and I tell the man at the gate to pay the taxi for you. You tell the taxi man he gets 2 times his clock, otherwise he no come way out the Long Beach. But don't you pay. My husband man at the gate pay the taxi. I couldn't do that, Mrs. Corleone, Kay said coldly. If Michael wanted to see me, he would have called me at home before this. Obviously, he doesn't want to resume our relationship. Mrs. Corleone's voice came briskly over the phone. You a very nice girl. You got a nice legs. But you no got a much brains, she chuckled. You come out to see me, not Mikey. I want to talk to you. You come right now, and no pay the taxi. I wait for you. The phone clicked. Mrs. Corleone had hung up. Kay could have called back and said she wasn't coming, but she knew she had to see Michael, to talk to him, even if it was just polite talk. If he was home now, openly, that meant he was no longer in trouble. He could live normally. She jumped off the bed and started to get ready to see him. She took a great deal of care with her makeup and dress. When she was ready to leave, she stared at her reflection in the mirror. Was she better looking than when Michael had disappeared, or would he find her unattractively older? Her figure had become more womanly, her hips rounder, her breasts fuller. Italians like that, supposedly, though Michael had always said he loved her being so thin. It didn't really matter. Michael obviously didn't want anything to do with her anymore. Otherwise, he most certainly would have called in the last 6 months he had been home. Mrs. Corleone herself opened the door and greeted Kay with a warm embrace that surprised her. Then she surveyed Kay with an appraising eye. You a beautiful girl, she said flatly. I have stupid sons. She pulled Kay inside the door and led her to the kitchen, where a platter of food was already set out and a pot of coffee perked on the stove. Michael comes home pretty soon, she said. You surprise him. She saw him first through the kitchen window. A car pulled up in front of the house, and 2 other men got out. Then Michael. He straightened up to talk with one of the other men. His profile, the left one, was exposed to her view. It was cracked, indented, like the plastic face of a doll that a child had wantonly kicked. In a curious way, it did not mar his handsomeness, in her eyes, but moved her to tears. She saw him put a snow-white handkerchief to his mouth and nose, and hold it there for a moment, while he turned away to come into the house. Aunt Kay, who had meant to just say hello, how are you, in the coolest possible way, slipped out of her seat to run into his arms, bury her face against his shoulder. He kissed her wet cheek and held her until she finished weeping, and then walked her out to his car, waved his bodyguard away, and drove off with her beside him, she repairing her makeup by simply wiping what was left of it away with her handkerchief. I've got a place in the city, Michael said. Is it all right if we go there, or should it be dinner and drinks at a restaurant? I'm not hungry, Kay said. Did they find the man who really unalived the policeman? Is that why you were able to come home? For a moment, Michael didn't answer. Yes, they did, he said. It was in all the New York papers. Didn't you read about it? Kay laughed with the relief of him denying he was a unaliver. We only get the New York Times up in our town, she said. She paused, and then she said, It's funny the way your mother used to talk. I almost believed you had done it. And just before you came, while we were drinking coffee, she told me about that crazy man who confessed. Michael said maybe my mother did believe it at first. Your own mother? Kay asked. Michael grinned. Mothers are like cops. They always believe the worst. Michael led her to the upstairs apartment, which consisted of an enormous living room, a huge kitchen, and door that led to the bedroom. In one corner of the living room was a bar, and Michael mixed them both a drink. They sat on a sofa together, and Michael said quietly, We might as well go into the bedroom. Kay took a long pull from her drink and smiled at him. Yes, she said. For Kay, the love-making was almost like it had been before, except Michael was rougher, more direct, not as tender as he had been, as if he were on guard against her. But she didn't want to complain. It would wear off. In a funny way, men were more sensitive in a situation like this, she thought. She had found making love to Michael, after a 2-year absence, the most natural thing in the world. It was as if he had never been away. You could have written me. You could have trusted me, she said, nestling against his body. I would have practiced a New England almater. Yankees are pretty close-mouthed too, you know. Michael laughed softly in the darkness. I never figured you to be waiting, he said. I never figured you to wait after what happened. Kay said quickly, I never believed you unalived those 2 men, except maybe when your mother seemed to think so. but I never believed it in my heart. I know you too well." She could hear Michael give a sigh. "It doesn't matter whether I did it or not," he said. "You have to understand that." Kay was a little stunned by the coldness in his voice. She said, "So just tell me now, did you or didn't you?" Michael sat up on his pillow, and in the darkness a light flared as he got a cigarette going. "If I asked you to marry me, would I have to answer that question first before you give me an answer to mine?" Kay said, "I don't care. I love you. I don't care. If you loved me, you wouldn't be afraid to tell me the truth. You wouldn't be afraid I might tell the police. That's it, isn't it? You're really a gangster then. Isn't that so? But I really don't care. What I care about is that you obviously don't love me. You didn't even call me up when you got back home." Michael didn't laugh. His voice sounded absent-minded. "You know, when I came home, I wasn't that glad when I saw my family, my father, my mother, my sister Connie, and Tom. It was nice, but I didn't really give a damn. Then I came home tonight and saw you in the kitchen, and I was glad." "Is that what you mean by love?" "That's close enough for me," Kay said. You said be serious," Kay went on. "If we get married, what kind of life am I supposed to lead? Like your mother? Like an Italian housewife with just the kids and home to take care of? And what about if something happens? I suppose you would wind up in jail some day." "No, that's not possible," Michael said. "Unalived, yes. Jail, no." Kay laughed at his confidence. It was a laugh that had a funny mixture of pride with its amusement. "How can you say that?" she said. "Really?" Michael sighed. "These are all the things I can't talk to you about. I don't want to talk to you about." Kay was silent for a long time. "Then do you want me to marry you? Why do you want me to marry you after never calling me all these months? Am I so good in bed?" Michael nodded gravely. "Sure," he said, "but I'm getting it for nothing, so why should I marry you for that?" "Look, I don't want to answer now. We're going to keep seeing each other. You can talk it over with your parents. I hear father's a real tough guy in his own way. Listen to his advice." "You haven't answered why you want to marry me," Kay said. Michael took a white handkerchief from the drawer of the night table and held it to his nose. He blew into it, then wiped. "There's the best reason for not marrying me," he said. "How would that be, having a guy around who always has to blow his nose?" Kay said impatiently, "Come on, be serious. I asked you a question." Michael held a handkerchief in his hand. "Okay," he said, "this one time. You're the only person I felt any affection for, that I care about. I didn't call you because it never occurred to me that you'd still be interested in me after everything that's happened. Sure, I could have chased you. I could have conned you, but I didn't want to do that. Now here's something I'll trust you with, and I don't want you to repeat it, even to your father. If everything goes right, the Corleone family will be completely legitimate in about 5 years. Some very tricky things have been done to make that possible. That's when you may become a wealthy widow. Now what do I want you for? Well, because I want you and I want a family. I want kids. It's time. I don't want those kids to be influenced by me the way I was influenced by my father. I don't mean my father deliberately influenced me. He never did. He never even wanted me in the family business. He wanted me to become a professor or a doctor, something like that. But things went bad, and I had to fight for my family. I had to fight because I love and admire my father. I never knew a man more worthy of respect. He was a good husband and a good father and a good friend to people who are not so fortunate in life. There's another side to him, but that's not relevant to me as his son. Anyways, I don't want that to happen to our kids. I want them to be influenced by you. I want them to grow up to be all-American kids, real all-American, the whole work. Maybe they or their grandchildren will go into politics," Michael grinned. "Maybe one of them will be president of the United States. Why the hell not? In my history course at Dartmouth, we did some background on all the presidents, and they had fathers and grandfathers who were lucky they didn't get hanged. But I'll settle for my kids being doctors or musicians or teachers. They'll never be in the family business. By the time they are that old, I'll be retired anyway, and you and I will be part of some country club crowd. The good simple life of well-to-do Americans. How does that strike you for a proposition?" "Marvelous," Kay said. "But you sort of skipped over the widow part." On page 392, they married up in New England in a small ceremony with only her family and a few of her friends. She had gotten pregnant right away and was living with Michael at the mall. She was having her second child in 2 years of marriage. On pages 392 to 393, Kay notices Mama Corleone attending church every single morning. In a completely natural way, Mama Corleone said, "I go for my husband." She pointed down toward the floor, "so he don't go down there." She paused. "I say prayer for his soul every day so he will go up there." She pointed heavenward. It was said jokingly, almost in her grim Italian old crony fashion. As always, when her husband was not present, there was an attitude of disrespect to the great Don. On pages 393 to 394, later in the morning, Connie Corleone would walk across the mall with her 2 children to pay Kay a visit and chat. Kay liked Connie, her vivaciousness, her obvious fondness for her brother Michael. Did Michael really like Carlo, as he seemed to? Kay had observed before that when Connie spoke about her husband in relation to her family, she was always nervously eager for some word of approval for Carlo. Kay was amazed. She realized that Michael was a little colder to his sister Connie than he was to anyone else, despite Connie's affection, because Michael knew Carlo would eventually be unalived for his role in the unaliving of Sonny on page 415. And so on that day, before the meeting with the Barzini family, Michael Corleone stood godfather to the son of Carlo and Connie Rizzi. Michael seemed to only do it to appease Kay, but the book explains more. On pages 436 to 437, Connie had flown home with her mother. The children left in Vegas. She had restrained her widow's grief until the limousine pulled into the mall. Then, before she could be restrained by her mother, she ran across a cobbled street to Michael Corleone's house. She burst through the door and found Michael and Kay in the living room. Kay started to go to her, to comfort her, and take her in her arms in a sisterly embrace, but stopped short when Connie started screaming at her brother, screaming curses and reproaches. "You lousy bastard," she shrieked. "You killed my husband. You waited until our father died, and nobody could stop you, and you killed him. You unalived him. You unalived my husband. You waited until our father died, and nobody could stop you, and you unalived him. You unalived him. You blamed him about Sonny. You always did. Everybody did. But you never thought about me. You never gave a damn about me. What am I going to do now? What am I going to do?" She was wailing. Two of Michael's bodyguards had come up behind her and were waiting for orders from him, but he just stood there impassively and waited for his sister to finish. Kay said in a shocked voice, "Connie, you're upset. Don't say such things." Connie had recovered from her hysteria. Her voice held a deadly venom. "Why do you think he was always so cold to me? Why do you think he kept Carlo here on the mall? All the time he knew he was going to unalive my husband, but he didn't dare while my father was alive. My father would have stopped him. He knew that. He was just waiting. And then he stood godfather to our child just to throw us off the track. The cold-hearted bastard. You think you know your husband? Do you know how many men he has unalived with my Carlo? Just read the papers. Barzini and Tattaglia and the others. My brother had them unalived." She had worked herself into hysteria again. She tried to spit in Michael's face, but she had no saliva. "Get her home and get her a doctor," Michael said. The two bodyguards immediately grabbed Connie's arms and pulled her out of the house. Kay was shocked, still horrified. She said to her husband, "What made her say all those things, Michael? What makes her believe that?" Michael shrugged. She's hysterical. Kay looked into his eyes. "Michael, it's not true. Please say it's not true." Michael shook his head wearily. "Of course it's not. Just believe me. This one time, I'm letting you ask about my affairs, and I'm giving you an answer. It is not true." He had never been more convincing. He looked directly into her eyes. He was using all the mutual trust they had built up in their married life to make her believe him, and she could not doubt any longer. She smiled at him ruefully and came into his arms for a kiss. "We both need a drink," she said. She went to the kitchen for ice, and while there, heard the front door open. She went out of the kitchen and saw Clemenza, Neri, and Rocco Lamponi come in with their bodyguards. Michael had his back to her, but she moved so that she could see him in profile. At that moment, Clemenza addressed her husband, greeting him formally. "Don Michael," Clemenza said. Kay could see how Michael stood to receive their homage. He reminded her of statues in Rome, statues of those Roman emperors of antiquity, who by divine right held the power of life and death over their fellow men. One hand was on his hip. The profile of his face showed a cold, proud power. His body was carelessly, arrogantly at ease, weight resting on one foot, slightly behind the other. The capo regimes stood before him. In that moment, Kay knew that everything Connie had accused Michael of was true. She went back into the kitchen and wept. On page 397, Kay never asked Michael how his business had gone. Even such polite questions were understood to be awkward. Not that he wouldn't give her an equally polite answer, but would remind them both of the forbidden territory their marriage could never include. In the movie, Michael says, "Don't ask me about my business, Kay." When she continues to push him, he slams his hand on the desk and yells, "Enough!" He saw the look of concern on her face, the look that said she believed he did it. He said, this one time, I'll let you ask me about my affairs." "Is it true?" Kay whispered. He paused while looking at her. "No," Michael finally said. Kay is relieved until she looked through the doorway and knew Michael was lying. The doorway and the door closing is symbolic of the separation in their relationship and how Michael shuts her out of his life, his true life. And Kay knows. She knows who he is. She knows what he is, and she never accepts it. On pages 442 to 444, it was only here, in these dim, vaulted churches, that she allowed herself to think. On pages 442 to 444, it was only here in these dim, vaulted churches that she allowed herself to think about her husband's other life. She had left him because of that lie, not because of the deed. She went to her parents, and Hagen was sent to get her a week later. Kay said, "He's not the man I married." Hagen laughed shortly. "If he were, he'd be dead now. You'd be a widow now. You'd have no problem." "Come on, Tom. Speak out straight once in your life. I know Michael can't, but you're not Sicilian. You can tell a woman the truth. You can treat her like an equal, a fellow human being." So Hagen told Kay the truth, and then Kay and the children returned to Michael. Kay became Catholic, and just like Mama Corleone had done for her husband, Kay went to church every morning and prayed for the soul of Michael Corleone. In The Godfather Part 2, the storyline is changed from the book. Fredo's wife looks like a showgirl from Las Vegas, and she does not respect her husband or his family. Michael stepped in to control her, and Fredo feels incompetent. In the movie, Connie shows up a week late with another gigolo she intends to marry. She doesn't care about her children, and her mother chastises her for her behavior. She only goes to Michael because she wants money. Michael wants her to stay with the family at the mall, but she refuses. In the book, on page 440, Connie Corleone easily found a new husband. In fact, she did not wait the year of respect before filling her bed again with a fine young fellow who had come to work as a male secretary, a boy from a reliable Italian family, but graduated from the top business college in America. Francesca, Sonny's daughter, is planning to get married to a man from a wealthy family named Gardner Shaw. He is fair-skinned, with light-colored hair and eyes. The Corleones are blending their heritage from their dark ancestry to become the fair people they wish to emulate. They have been together for 6 months. Sonny's widow steps forward to speak for the couple, but Michael said they can speak for themselves. It was expected for her to marry well, and her husband appears to be her choice. A nice American waspy family with power of their own, and a family to join in respectability to the Corleone name. Money attracts money. "Don't you worry, you're going to be next," he tells another bridesmaid standing behind Francesca. "Make sure her dowry is big," Michael tells Hagen. "If it comes from the family, they'll think Italian brides go barefoot." Francesca tells Kay Michael is wonderful. Kay is running behind Anthony and tells Anthony, "No, no, I do not want you near that house." Anthony stops outside the home, and Kay looks at the men hovering around. "Anthony," she calls again. He walks to her, and she embraces him. Kay is awkward receiving recognition for the donation given to the Nevada University on Anthony's communion. "How's the baby?" Michael asks Kay. "Sleeping beside me," she answers. "Does it feel like a boy?" he wants to know. Yes, it does, Michael," she answers. "Kay, I'm sorry about all the people today. Bad timing. It couldn't be helped, though. Made me think of what you once told me," she reflected. "In 5 years, the Corleone family will be completely legitimate." She stops cold. "That was 7 years ago." "I know," Michael said. "I'm trying." Michael's in their bedroom and finds a drawing Anthony made of his father in a limousine with the question, "Do you like it, yes or no?" written on top. "Did you see this?" Michael asks Kay. "Uh-huh," she answers sleepily. He walks toward the window, and Kay asks, "Michael, why are the drapes open?" Just as he did many years ago with the unalivings of Apollonia, Michael realizes the danger. This time he spots it in time to save himself and Kay. "Kay, are you all right?" "Yeah." "Are you hit?" She shakes her head and says no, but it was close, too close. Kay is sitting on the couch, holding Mary while Michael smokes and paces. The look she gives him tells him everything, how fed up she is with this life, the way he puts his family in danger. Michael doesn't even bother to buy his son a present. Hagen buys it and tells Michael what it is so he'll know. He doesn't even concern himself with his daughter Mary. There's something else. Hagen has to tell Michael, but he doesn't want to. "What? Come on. What?" Michael urges. Kay had a miscarriage. She lost a baby. Did Hagen know the truth? Yes, probably. He certainly didn't want to tell Michael. He knew better. Was it a boy? Is all Michael cares about. Later he sees the toy Hagen bought for Anthony out in the yard. Michael can hear Kay sewing as he stands outside the doorway. He looks in to see her at the sewing machine. Does she know he's there? She doesn't acknowledge him, and he doesn't speak to her. She pretends he isn't there. Now it is Kay who is shutting Michael out of her life. Michael turns around to leave. Michael goes to talk to his mother. They speak in Italian. What did Papa think? Deep in his heart, he asks. He was being strong for his family, but by being strong for his family, could he lose it? "You're thinking about your wife," Mama Corleone answered. "About the baby you lost. But you and your wife can always have another baby." That's how people dealt with grief back then. Just have another baby to replace the one you lost, and don't think about it. But that doesn't work, and the hope for life the parents have cannot be so easily disregarded or replaced. No, I meant lose this family, Michael said. But you can never lose your family, says a woman who has buried a husband, a son, and a son-in-law. Times are changing, Michael said. Michael, excuse me. Michael turns around to acknowledge Kay. The children are outside. We're going, she tells them. What do you mean you're going? Michael said, confused. We're all going home. She lets Rocco know they need privacy to talk. Michael, I'm not going back to Nevada. I brought the children to say goodbye to you. I want you to know I'm very happy for you. I suppose I always knew you were too smart to let them ever beat you. Would Kay have preferred for Michael to have been held accountable by law and sent to prison? Yes, it would have made everything much easier. She wouldn't have had to leave him. He would be leaving her. Why don't you sit down, he asked. No, I'm not going to stay long. I can't, she explained. There's some things I have to talk to you about. Some things have been on my mind. Changes I want to make. He's conning her, and she knows it. It's too late for changes, she said. She looks down. I promised myself I wasn't going to say anything. Michael doesn't think it's too late. What really happened with Pantangeline, Michael? He shrugs. His brother came and helped him. I didn't even know he had a brother. Where is he now? He's on the plane back to Italy. All he had to do was show his face? Kay asked. It was between the brothers, Kay, Michael says coldly. I had nothing to do with it. Kay knows better, and they fight while the children are in the hallway. Mary is young, and she is playing, but Anthony is older. He leans against the wall, listening. You're not going, Michael says. Not you, not the kids, no one. You're my wife. They're my children. I love you. I won't allow it. Michael, you say you love me, and then you talk about allowing me to leave. Because love is not control. It's not ownership. Love is given freely. There's been going on for years between men and women that will not change, and that's it. You have become blind, Michael, Kay cries out. Blind to what? Michael wants to know. Look what's happened to us. My God, look what's happened to our son, Michael. Nothing has happened to our son, Michael denies. Don't tell me. Anthony is fine, Michael yells. Anthony is not fine, Kay says back. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear about it, Michael repeatedly yells. Over, he says. This moment, I feel no love for you at all. She shakes her head. I never thought that would happen, but it has. Kay, Michael lights up a cigarette. We're going to leave tomorrow. Kay, why don't you take the kids back to their room? Michael, you haven't heard me. Kay, what do you want from me? Do you expect me to let you go? Do you expect me to let you take my children from me? Don't you know me? Don't you know that's an impossibility that can never happen? That I would use all my power to keep something like that from happening? Don't you know that? Kay remains silent. Kay, he says, stepping forward. Now he's selling his argument even further. He's trying to manipulate her. Now in time you'll feel differently. You'll be glad I stopped you. I know that. Kay's silence can be felt like a brick wall. I know you blame me for losing the baby. And her face changes. Michael is so distant from Kay that he reads her wrong. Yes, he nods. I know what that meant to you. I'll make it up to you, Kay. I'll swear. I'll make it up to you. I'm going to change. I'll change. I've learned I have the strength to change. Kay starts shaking her head. She knows he won't change. Michael will never change. Michael thinks Kay is silent because she is listening. She's not. She already knows the truth. And you'll forget about this miscarriage. And we'll have another child and we'll go on. You and I. Kay finally breaks like a dam of emotion. We'll go on, Michael repeats. Oh, Michael, Kay begins. Michael, you are blind. It wasn't a miscarriage. It was a pregnancy termination, she cries silently. She continues. A pregnancy termination, Michael. Just like our marriage is a pregnancy termination, something that's unholy and evil. I don't want your son, Michael. I wouldn't bring another one of your sons into this world. It was a pregnancy termination, Michael, Kay repeats. It was a son, and I had it unalived because this must all end, she cries. I know now that it's over. I knew it then. There would be no way, Michael, no way you could ever forgive me. Not with this Sicilian thing that's been going on for 2,000 years. Michael hits Kay, and she falls to the couch. You won't take my children, Michael points to her. I will, she breathes. You won't take my children, he repeats. They're my children too, Kay says. Michael walks away from her. Mama Corleone passes away, and Connie returns transformed into the Italian matriarch to replace her mother. Connie held Fredo in front of her mother's casket. He was always so vulnerable. When his father was shot in front of him, he was nearly catatonic. Michael, it's Connie, she announces to Michael as he waits with his children in the boathouse. Michael, he looks at her. I'd like to stay close to home now if it's all right. He nods to her lightly. Is Kay coming, she asks. He shakes his head slightly and says no. Michael, Fredo's in the house with Mama. He asked for you, and Tom said, she shakes her head, you wouldn't see him. Michael nods lightly and says that's right. Connie turns to the children and says, kids, why don't you go outside for a while? They don't move. Michael, Connie directs her attention to him. Please, I want to talk to you. Michael motions slightly, and Anthony stands up with his sister to go out of the room. Michael, I hated you for so many years. I think I did things to myself to hurt myself, so you know that I could hurt you. You were just being strong for us, the way Papa was, and I forgive you. At that moment, Michael raises his head slightly in disapproval. Can't you forgive Fredo? He's so sweet and helpless without you. You need me, Michael. I want to take care of you now. He touches her hand and her face. Connie, he said. Connie enters a room, dressed as a grieving Italian matriarch. She looks over at the children's nanny, and the nanny looks worried. Kay is in a room with her children. Kay, you have to go, Connie tells her. You are so pretty, she says to Mary, sitting on her lap. Anthony is sitting alone on a chair. Kay, will you please hurry, Connie says. She is allowing Kay to see her children. Connie is a mother, too. And a man taking a woman's children away is unforgivable. She tells Mary she loves her and kisses her. Anthony, kiss Mama goodbye, Kay says. Anthony, will you kiss your mother goodbye, Connie demands. Anthony, say goodbye to Mama. And he moves from his chair to embrace her. I love you, Anthony, she says. Kay, please, Connie pleads. The nanny is standing as well. All right, Kay says as she walks to leave. Connie hugs her, and the nanny hugs Mary. Kay turns one last time to hug her children. She hugs Mary, but Anthony stops before he can kiss her goodbye. Before Kay can leave, Michael finds her at the door. Michael is standing in a doorway, just as Kay is. He walks slowly to the door and stares at her without blinking. He looks her up and down. Kay looks at him with fear and trepidation, with dread. Michael goes to the door and shuts it on her as if she isn't there. Kay cries out in pain. Michael turns away with a look of emptiness on his face. Michael entrusts Kay with the education of his children. Mary and Anthony in particular have pulled away from their father over the years. Michael has a family photo that includes Kay in his study. Michael is being honored for his charitable work in New York in 1979. He says the only wealth in this world is children, more than all the money and power on earth. You are my treasure, he says. On his desk is a family photo of Kay, Michael, and the children taken on the day of Anthony's communion. There is also a current photo of Mary and Anthony. Perhaps you might prevail upon your mother to come to this celebration, and from time to time we can all see each other at family functions, Michael writes them. Mary and Anthony are at the church along with Connie. When Michael turns around to see Kay has joined the ceremony. When Michael turns around, he sees Kay has joined the ceremony in the church. She is greeted warmly by some members, along with a man by her side. Connie has moved into the role of matriarch of the Corleone family after the death of her mother. A new character, Vincent Mancini, enters. In the book, Lucy Mancini was not pregnant by Sonny, but she attends the family function with the son she was pregnant with in the movie. Their names are not on the invitation list, but Vinny explains the Mancinis are their guests. Kay introduces the man at her side as her husband. Mary Corleone crosses paths with Vincent. I remember you, she says. You remember me. From where, he asks. From last time we were at a party together, she explained. She last saw him when she was 8 and he was 15, at least a decade ago. Where? You haven't kissed me yet. Relatives always kiss, Mary tells Vincent. Who's your father? Vincent asks. I'll give you a hint, Mary said. He's Italian. Mary, Connie asks, will somebody please hail Mary? I think I inherited my father's love for speech making, but here it goes. Mary hands Archbishop a $100 million check to help the poor of Sicily in the name of Vito Corleone. Don't spend it all in one place, she says. Mary hugs her father, then goes to her mother and hugs her. Mary, I'm so proud of you, she says. Kay's husband also expresses affection toward Mary. Michael, you have done a wonderful thing for the people of Sicily. Michael nods. Let's just hope the money gets to the people who need it. Amen, the Archbishop says. It won't. Kay's reflection is seen in an old black and white photo of Michael, Kay, and Anthony, taken on the day they were at Anthony's communion. She looks down momentarily, then is startled by Michael's hello to her. She steps back when she sees him. Well, congratulations, Michael. That's quite an honor, Kay says. A little expensive, wouldn't you say? She looks uncomfortable beside him and holds onto the table behind her to steady herself. It's been a long time, hasn't it? Yeah, 8 years, she agrees. You look wonderful. Kay looks at him like she can't believe what he's saying. She tells him his son has something to talk to him about. I came here for him, she told Michael. Johnny Fontaine sings to Mary as he once sang to Connie long ago. Mary is wearing a black velvet dress with gold-colored skirt and a cross on her neck. Anthony is waiting for his father in his study. Kay enters the room with him, but stands with her hands tightly clasped in front of her to guard herself. She talks for her son and tells Michael Anthony doesn't want to be a lawyer. He wants to follow his love of music. Anthony tells him he's going his own way and he will never work for his father. I have bad memories, Anthony says. Every family has bad memories, Michael says back. Kay stares at him, standing beside the door opening. Michael tells Kay Anthony is throwing greatness away. This is greatness? Kay asks. You know now you're so respectable, I think you're more dangerous than you ever were. She preferred him as a common mafia hood. At least he was honest. With money he's buying an image. Michael wants to talk common sense. Kay steps forward and informs him Tony knows Michael unalived Fredo. Fredo spent time with Anthony as a child. He was probably doing it in part to get back into Michael's good graces, but for Anthony it meant so much to him because his own father did not spend much time with him. Anthony loved Fredo. Why did you come here for? Michael asks. I came here to protect my son, Kay said. A real mama bear. I didn't come here to see you disguised by your church. I think that was a shameful ceremony, she explained. Michael said he spent his life protecting his family. That's your big thing, Kay said. Reason, backed up by unaliving people. You hate me, he repeats. No, I don't hate you, Kay said. I dread you. That same look of fear is in Kay's eyes. She calls it dread. Dread is more than fear. Dread is to anticipate with great apprehension of fear. She always knew with Michael there was going to be destruction. Michael destroys everything he touches. I tried to protect all of you from the horrors of the world, Michael said, but you became my horror, she tells him. She stares at him momentarily, then heads to the door. Before she opens it, she turns around and says, Our children still love you, though especially Mary. That's something, he says as he sits in his chair in the darkness. We can build on that for their sake. Kay, throughout, keeps hovering at the door. He wants to build something on the children's love. And Kay says only if Michael releases Tony to build his own life, away from Michael. I'll let Tony go, he says, and Kay thanks him. Kay, in a sense, has agreed to sacrifice her daughter in exchange for her son. Finally, she leaves. Hey, Vinny, who's your favorite aunt? Connie asks Vincent. You are, he answers. Lucy Mancini is in the background and walks away as Connie takes over with Vincent. Today I'm going to talk to Michael about your little problem, she assures him. Michael, you know Vincent Mancini, Sonny's boy. Connie enters the room with Vincent and is visually supporting him, introducing him and standing behind him. That was Papa's neighborhood, now it's a sewer. Zaza runs it like a disgrace. That's what the women tell me, Connie says. She remains while business is discussed, which is very unusual for a woman in the mafia. Connie motions to Vincent and says he needs your support, Michael. Vincent enters the inner circle of Michael with Connie's urging. Vincent informs Michael of the unaliving attempt on his life, with the ever-present Connie at his side. He did the right thing, Connie exclaims. He got Zaza's name. Michael, Connie says, and Michael turns to face her. Now they'll fear you. She has a look of power on her face. Maybe they should fear you, Michael says, pointing to her. Mary is in the audience at a press conference where her father explains the hundreds of millions of dollars spent for the so-called charity and the stockholders of the large corporation and investment group the Catholic Church is involved with. Mary, chairman of the Vito Corleone Foundation, looks skeptical. Dad, Mary begins, Tony says I'm a front for the foundation, that you're using me to just pull the strings, to get the money where you want it, to shine up your public image. Mary, Michael explains, this is real. This foundation is real. I wanted Anthony to be a part of it. I thought the two of you would be together on this, he said. I won't interfere. I'll help only if you ask. Mary asks, what is this really for? Why are you doing this? Why am I doing this? I'm doing this for my children, Michael says. You're doing it for your children, too. This foundation supposed to help all people. Of course, that's the purpose, Michael said. It's legitimate, Mary. I swear, this is legitimate. Dad, I want this to bring me closer to you, she says. I will burn in hell to keep you safe, Michael swears. Vincent and Mary meet up in the old neighborhood. Vincent points to a Genco olive oil sign where the grandfather owned the company after working as an employee there for 3 years. Only in America, Mary says. Vincent tells Mary about what he knows about their fathers in the old days. What was Sonny like, Mary asks. He was the prince of the city, Vincent smiles. He died before I was born, but I heard a million stories about him. He was a legend. What about my father, Mary asks. A great man, your father. A hero. He saved the family. Vincent, did he unalive his own brother? No, Vincent says convincingly. So those are all lies, she says. Just stories, sweetheart. Okay? Okay, I believe you, Mary smiles. Connie is in the kitchen with Michael after the assassination attempt, and Michael has a diabetic stroke. Michael, she cries out. She rides with him in the ambulance, and Mary shows up with Vincent. I'll call Kay, Connie offers. Connie joins the conversation with Vincent to plan an attack on the ones who tried to take his life. He may not survive anyway, Connie informs Vincent. How would you do it? She wanted to know. I'll do it. I'll do it myself, Vincent says. Do it, she commands. Do it, she commands Vincent over the commands of her brother. Hello, Michael, it's Kay, she says to him, away from the hospital bed. He didn't expect her to visit him. I know, says Kay, but I'm here. I'm glad, Michael says. It's the first time I've seen you look so helpless. She has sympathy for him. It's not so bad, really, he tells her. I feel I'm getting wiser now. Yeah, she agrees. The sicker you get, the wiser you get, huh? Michael, I want to thank you for Tony. She tells him Anthony is doing well in his career. He will sing in Sicily at Palermo, and Michael tells her he will be there. She calls in their children to see Michael. All along, she kept her distance from Michael at the doorway. Mary goes to visit Vincent at his club. It's so strange, just me and Aunt Connie in the house. I feel better when I'm with you, Mary says. What's wrong, sweetheart? Vincent asks. I'm really scared about my father, Mary says. When I saw them take him out of the ambulance, I thought he was gone. Everyone said he's going to be better, Vincent says. I remember them shooting at our house when I was little. Is it all happening again? She asked. Why are you hiding here? Is something going to happen to you? Vincent assures her he will be okay. Vincent and Mary are intimate for the first time. Don't ever again give that kind of order. Not while I'm alive, Michael commands. You are too sick to make a decision, Vincent says. I got the go-ahead from Mary. I got the go-ahead from Connie. Connie? Michael repeats. Connie is dressed as some theatrical costume, a queen of darkness. I command this family, Michael says, right or wrong. It was not what I wanted, he yells. Do you understand? Vincent nods. He looks at Connie. Connie lifts her hands. Come on, Michael. She is insulted, he is asking her. Michael waits for her to answer. She turns away, then answers yes emphatically. Vincent helps Michael to his bed, where they talk. Michael asks Vincent, what are you doing with his daughter? What are you doing with her? Vincent seems embarrassed. It's too dangerous, Michael says. Do you hear me? Vincent nods. Connie continues to sit in while Michael talks business. Michael and the rest of the family travel to Italy to support Anthony. While Anthony sings an authentic Sicilian song to his father, the ghost of Apollonia fills his memory. Michael sees the affection between Vincent and Mary during the song and doesn't approve. Michael explains to Mary and Anthony the unaliving of his first life. She was wonderful, beautiful, and I loved her. Then she died. Michael asks Mary about her love for her first cousin Vincent. Then I'll love him first, she said. Mary, you can't see him. Just don't see him any more, Michael demands. Anthony tells her it's too dangerous. Obey me on this, Mary, Michael demands. No, Dad, Mary answers and runs away. Mary's smart, Dad, Anthony says. She'll understand eventually. Michael does not seem so sure. Mary and Vincent continue to see each other. Mary finds photos of Apollonia. Connie goes to Michael to talk to him after he confesses his sins. Michael tells her the higher in status he rises, the more corrupt he has to be. He had hoped it would be the opposite, all to keep them from becoming the slaves of the rich. Michael admits to Connie he confessed his sins, and Connie says it's not like him. He doesn't have to confess his sins to a stranger. Michael said he was a true priest. You know, Connie began, sometimes I think of poor Fredo, drowned. It was God's will. She knew what Michael confessed about, and she knew Fredo did not drown. It was a terrible accident, she says, as she helps Michael with his medication, but it's finished. Michael, I love you. I'll always help you. All three women in the third movie are together at the train station, Mary, Connie, and Kay, with Michael. Kay's husband could not attend. Mary takes photos of her parents together. Michael offers to show Kay Sicily and the family history. She says she understands it well enough. Michael escorts Kay around Sicily. Connie tells Vincent he is the only one in this family with strength. If anything happens to Michael, I want you to strike back. I'll have everything ready, Vincent assures her. Connie looks pleased. You swear? She asks Vincent. I swear to you, he says back. Michael takes Kay around Sicily, and then they come across a wedding ceremony. You know, Mary's in love, she tells him. Yes, I know, he says, with a handsome young Italian man with dark eyes. She looks at Michael. I won't allow it, he told her. It's wrong, and it's dangerous. There is a puppet show for the children. A daughter puppet is saying, oh, Father, give me some time to pray to the Lord, as the father puppet holds a sword out. The Baroness of Carini had betrayed her husband and fallen in love with her cousin. There will be no forgiveness. Her father stabbed her through the heart and honor unaliving. Kay is disturbed by the show. Honor, huh, she says to Michael. Kay and Michael dance at the wedding, and Kay remembers when he came to her parents' house, and he took her to a room and told her that he wasn't going to have anything to do with a family business. You sound like Tony. I was in love like Tony, he answered. Michael returns to a place he was once hidden in, and he tells Kay he thought a lot of her then. She smiles at him and says, "Then you got married." "I still thought of you," he said. She walks away from the conversation, and she tells him it's dangerous for him there. Michael says the Sicilian people still hope for something better out of so much darkness, and Kay sees their relationship in the same way. "How so?" Michael says. "I'm still here, right? We do have a bad history, but I'm still here." But with dread, he finishes. "I want you to forgive me," he asks. "For what?" she asks. "Everything," he answers. Michael said he did what he did because his father was in danger, and then later she and the children were in danger. "You were all I loved and valued most in the world," he said. "I lost you anyway," he said. She won't look at him. "It was all for nothing. You have to understand, I had a whole other design planned." Kay breaks down. "I really don't know what you want from me, Michael," she says. "I'm not the man that you think I am." "I don't know," she cries. "I love you, Kay," he tells her. "Don't dread me any more." Michael says he dreams in Sicily about his wife and children and how he lost them. "I guess if it's any consolation, I want you to know that I've always loved you, Michael," she said as she was finally able to face him. "And you know I always will." Kay is watching Michael do his business from behind the door again, and she realizes nothing has changed. Connie walks in as Michael agrees to transfer power to Vincent. Michael says he can't do it anymore. Connie tells Michael to come with her. Don't worry, Vincent knows what to do. Michael tells Vincent to give up his daughter Mary. "That's the price you pay," he said, "for the life you choose." Vincent agrees, and he becomes a Corleone. Connie gives an old man a cannoli and watches while he dies. Vincent breaks it off with Mary. "I'll always love you," she tells him. "Love somebody else," he tells her. Michael watches the two interact, and Vincent walks away. Mary chases after her father to talk about Vincent. "Dad, why are you doing this to me? You don't have to do this, please. Do what Michael says." Mary takes a bullet meant for her father. "Dad," and she falls over. Michael holds his daughter and cries in pain. Kay holds her daughter in her arms. Connie covers her head in mourning. Michael returns in his mind to dancing with his daughter and two wives as he passed away in his yard as his father once did. There are channels on YouTube that encourage men, in particular, to idolize Michael, what he built, and his strategic moves to remove all of his enemies. They do not understand the moral of the story of the Corleone family. The rise in power these men sought to have will only destroy everything around them. Michael left behind an empire of dirt, and he died alone. He ended up destroying what he tried to protect all along. It was as if he asked his mother long ago, "Can a man lose his family while trying to protect it?" The answer is yes. Thank you for listening. Essay number 4, titled "Everything Money Can't Buy," based on the Candy spelling book, Candy at Last, will be uploaded shortly.